In this tutorial, I just want to go back over something I did in another tutorial where I looked at creating an image stamp for use within Substance Painter. So one of the issues we had when this was created, so it was something like a warning sign. Let's go into Substance Painter. So here I have my stamp, just drag this into the material. And just another example, so in fact, let me just go into, click on here, just click these two off. So if I go into this, just stamp this, it's fine, okay? Uses a transparency around whatever we created in Photoshop. So I took that created a transparency and saved it as a PNG. So I had a transparent background. And that's okay for the color information. But one of the problems is when we look at creating something like a height map, for example. Let's bring this height down. That when we stamp this, it's actually using the square area around this image to create that stamp. And obviously I want just the triangle area or the diamond area around this. So this isn't working. So what we can do to change this is actually create another image within Photoshop. So let's go into Photoshop. So this is just, let's get this. This is just the image brought in. I've just copied and pasted it into a document. Use a document size within Photoshop. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to make a duplicate of this layer. So I'm going to do a Control J. I can drag it down to this. I can go to Layer, Duplicate. So grab that, and I'm going to make a mask out of this. So first of all, I'm just going to go in and desaturate this. And then I'm going to grab this, Control A, or we can do Select A, all. I'm going to go copy this, Control C, go into my channels, and I'm going to create an alpha channel, and then paste this in. So what I want with this is I want this to be solid black and white to create transparency for this. So grab this, and I'm going to go in and image adjustments, and this time levels. I'm going to bring this up until we get rid of all the black. There is a slight bit of fringing around the outside of this, so I'm just going to bring up the whites to create quite a nice solid matte around that. So that is my transparency, okay? If I actually grab that, Control click on it, there we have my transparency there. I can go into my layers, switch this off, and I can always grab this one and let me just click on here, and then we've actually got this inverted, so I can just click on this mask here and invert that. So we could take that out with a transparency on there, but as you've seen, it doesn't quite work. But if you were just using the color information, that's absolutely fine. Okay. If I was doing this with another stamp, so I'm going to create another version, but use it as an alpha stamp, essentially. Then saving this out is going to have to save it out as a 32-bit image, so it retains a transparency on that, and that can take up more memory, which is kind of unnecessary. So what you could do on this is I could just create a new layer, and I could just fill this in with a black underneath that, okay, and I could just save that out like that. But we've got that saved out already, but I could just save that as a TGA or a PNG. I don't need the transparency on that, so it just saves a bit of memory. I can save it as a 24-bit image rather than a 32-bit. This instance, though, I'm going to actually create an alpha on this. So what I want to do for the purposes of Substance Painter, if you look at these alphas down here, we want the background to be black, and we want whatever we want to keep to be white. So I need to do that with this in Photoshop as well. So I've got my black background. I can actually, we can do this a number of different ways. Let me just create, in fact, what I can do is just go to my channels. I'm going to load in this selection. There, go back. I'm going to create a new layer. Let's just switch this off. And I actually want the inverse of this because this is inverted here. So let's grab that. Let's go to Select Inverse or Shift Control I. And now I can go with a white and I can just fill that in. Okay, and then do a Control D. So we have our transparency there. Another way to do that is actually to go into my channels and invert this transparency. So I can go in Image Adjustments and we can invert that. And then I can just click on that control click on it rather. That will load in my transparency, do a new layer, and this time I could just fill in there. Either way, it does exactly the same result. So with that selected, I can go in, File, Save As. Let's say we were to save this out as a, let's save it as a Targa. And I've got one here called Calcite. Let me just, for the sake of this, save that. And over here, I can now, because this is a black and white image, actually save this as a 16-bit resolution, which again just saves some space on that. Okay, so I have two images there. I have one with my actual cow image, can save as a 24-bit, or you could alternatively save like this if you wanted to keep the color information but get rid of the background as a 32-bit, but not really necessary with an alpha on there. And I've got both those two images. So in Substance Painter, let's just go in. So let's click on just a standard layer. Hide my material here, but just let's go in here just to show. I believe it's on my textures, so I can just drag this over, drag this into my base color. I have my stamp. And then if I go into my alphas, I have my cow sign alpha. So double click on that. So that's going to create our alpha in our alpha channel here. And now, same thing. Let's just go into the material or the properties. Got my height map. Now when I stamp, you see we have that pushing in around the diamond instead. And the same kind of thing with the roughness. If I was to go into the roughness here, and let's just take this alpha off for a second. If I take this roughness all the way down, which it is. So there, that's completely rough, but it's working around the entire square. So again, if I double click on my alpha to load that in, now that's just doing it over that area there. Okay, so that's a way to control if you're going to bring in these stamps to use as decals within Substance Painter. We just need to create an alpha essentially with that. And that's the end of that quick tutorial.